Hello, my friends. Welcome back. Resume Development Part 2. Bridget Marty, Carlson Business Career Center, here to help you continue to build your resume. We are going to focus this section on how to format your education portion of your resume and your experience section, which is where the bulk of the time will be focused. Education. Your education section, your header section is going to be the first thing we focus on, and that is the part that runs atop. It's kind of like your letterhead. So encourage you to list your name. You can see this candidate used initials, but you can do your full name however you choose to. Name can be in all capital letters. You'll see below that we have city and state, phone number, email, LinkedIn, URL. You do not need to put your full address on. Some folks also choose to remove their city and state, especially if they're doing a geographic job search and maybe they're looking to move out of Minnesota, be somewhere else. It's okay if you don't want to include your city or state. Also okay if you don't want to include that LinkedIn. But if you do include that LinkedIn URL, aim to have a vanity URL. If you watched Coach Will's section on LinkedIn, it's where you can make the end of your LinkedIn address to be more succinct and just say your name. Moving into education, you're going to start with the header. So that is the all capital letters identifying what this section is. Sections you're going to have in your resume: education, experience, Carlson projects, analytics projects. So the format is very consistent for how you list your graduate education and your undergraduate education. All capital letters for the name of the university, and then followed by a comma in the city and state. That helps the reader get a sense of where you were. Below that, you can list the name of the school. So we have Carlson School of Management because we are a nationally ranked business school. We do encourage folks to list the business school name on there. And then you'll see it says candidate for, and then the degree name. When you are in school, before you have graduated, you are a candidate for. And then off to the right, you'll see what is right aligned is the anticipated date of graduation, not the date that you're starting school, but the anticipated date of graduation. If you are a working professional and you're thinking, I have no idea, I might be 3, 4, 5 years, estimate. You could say spring of 2027, but we need something that is showing us when you aim to graduate. Below that, there's a couple options what you can put underneath the name of the degree. This candidate chose to show that they're doing an emphasis or they're doing a specialization in a certain area of brand management. For our like MBA programs, an emphasis is typically about 12 credits in a certain discipline. Then it's also meant to just highlight to the employer or the reader, this is your area of interest. You do not have to have an emphasis at all. Some folks will also use that space to list things like their GPA or their GMAT. The GMAT score can be really applicable if you're going into consulting or banking or iBanking careers. Can be a nice thing to add on there. You could also list if you are doing some study abroad experience. We'll hit into that a little bit later. And then you'll see below that is their undergrad institution. So you'll see University of Notre Dame, and again, follows the same format. Because that candidate has already graduated from that institution, they did list cum laude underneath their degree name to show that they did graduate with honors. So name of the school, name of the university, name of the school, name of the degree, the graduation date, far right aligned. Common question: what if you went to the same school for graduate and undergraduate, for example, the University of Minnesota? What you can do in terms of listing it is only list University of Minnesota once, which is great. It saves some space on your resume for you. So you have a little extra line. And what you'll notice is it says University of Minnesota, Carlson School, candidate for, and then we'll still keep a white space there. So we just have a little kind of pause. Then College of Liberal Arts, Bachelor of Arts, and the degree name, and then off to the right is the graduation date. To the reader, it's all bucketed under the University of Minnesota, so very easy for them to understand. So that's a nice way for you to be able to maximize space. The study abroad that I just mentioned a little bit ago. Global learning experiences are so valuable. Yes, you absolutely can list that under your college experience section. So you'll see this candidate under their bachelor's experience here at the University of Minnesota in the College of Liberal Arts. They did a learning abroad experience in Spain. And so we just list like learning abroad, you could say semester abroad, and they just, or you can just list the name of the school and then the location. And then they just did spring because it was throughout spring semester. What that does is signals to the reviewer, this person has global experience. It can also be a wonderful talking point in an interview. And they might say, tell me more, or I've always wanted to go to Spain. Why don't you tell me more about it? So it's a great way to, again, differentiate yourself. Now we're getting into that experience section. This is the part that can really throw candidates off of writing bullet points about themselves. And in Minnesota, folks don't like to brag much, but I do. So I'm here to help you. Okay. First things first, we have to know where you have worked. So you will have you have your education section, then you'll have another subheader, sorry, a header that's all capital letters that says experience. And we will then list the name of the company underneath it. The left side of the screen, you'll see if it's a company that's well-known, Fortune 500, if it's well-known in the community that you're applying in, we just list the name of the company in all capital letters, comma, with city, and then the state abbreviation. No problem. However, if you are coming from a different region, a smaller organization, we want to help the reader out. Every time a reviewer is going through a resume and they come across a phrase such as a word, an acronym, a company name, that if it's something that they don't automatically recognize, they will continue to skim, but it's going to take their brain 7 seconds to still comprehend what's going on because their brain is still trying to run through and figure out what was that word? What does that word mean? What does that word mean? So they're just kind of skimming and carrying on. But so we want to do is help that reader out and offer a little assistance or a description. So you'll see on the right, we have some examples of companies where you have still the name of the company in capital letters, city and state, and then we put parentheses and italicized a brief descriptor of the company. This is something chat with your coach about to see, should you do it? Do you need to do it? Most importantly, we need to have another set of eyes on the resume to know, is it needed or not? So again, company name, follow those instructions. Now, what goes underneath that company name is going to be the title of your role and then the bullet points. A couple things to keep in mind. We write the experience section in reverse chronological. So if we're reading top down on the resume, it's going to be the most recent experiences at the top going back. The candidate that you are most recently, so the last few years you had in your career or most recently, those are the points where I'm looking for more bullet points ideally, because you have been really leaning into your professional life at that point. You might say, hey, Coach Bridget, I actually only have like a year of experience in my most recent role. That's okay. I don't need you to bulk it up with extra bullet points just because, but no, it is very okay to add more bullet points for more recent roles. And then the bullet point length can be 1 to 3 lines long. A lot of candidates come to us with these 1-point bullet points, 1-line bullet points. And I appreciate when something's concise. However, you are a mix of different things. And so we want you to show that variety of having 1, 2-line bullet points, maybe 3 lines. If you can say it out loud in one breath, we're pretty good. So we like to have a mix of concise and complex. Keeps it spicy for the reader. Again, I feel like I'm gonna say this all the time. Keep those keywords in mind about your brand and also the function and industry space that you're going into. If you are in an industry space where clients are called stakeholders, and that's who you refer them to in that clients, use the stakeholders. They use that. Finally, a fun part about resume writing is that we can write bullet points in Twitter speak or X speak. That is eliminating unnecessary kind of adder words, adjectives and articles if you want to get grammatically correct. So you can see the before and after. Instead of saying led a team of 15, we can say led team of 15. You can write it the way our brain is actually going to receive it, which is going to focus on the key verbs and nouns. And so that's a way to also give you some space. You might be thinking, oh goodness, I don't need to save space. I don't even know if I'm going to have enough bullet points to fill out my resume. you will. And eventually, as you continue on in your career, you're going to be adding more and more in there. And so you're going to want to maximize your space. Now, what are the topics of these bullet points? Like, where do we start? Earlier in one of the other videos, I talked about the core competencies that we want you to be centering as you build out your resume. The majority of careers, roles across functional areas and industries, whether it's education, healthcare, medical technology, retail, manufacturing, aerospace, roles that are going to be in the business space will leverage or need these types of competencies: leadership, thought leadership, people leadership, project leadership, strategic thinking and problem solving, influence and persuasion, communication, analysis skills, project management and organization, untangling the Christmas lights, teamwork, working collaboratively, cross-functionally, and again, that industry and functional expertise. Those are the skills and competencies we are looking for as coaches when we're reviewing a resume and as the hiring manager. You also notice personal accountability you can do is looking on that box on the right side of the screen, which says for each bullet point on your resume, be able to identify that skill, knowledge, or competency you're demonstrating. So in short, if we were to put your resume up on the side of the screen, for each bullet point, could we draw an arrow to the competency that it is demonstrating? That goes back to the idea of what are your core messages? What is it you want to make sure that the employer hiring manager knows about you? You are capable of analyzing information and providing strategic recommendations. You have demonstrated capabilities in influencing others to see your way of thinking. So we always want to be able to tie a bullet point to a core competency. If we can't, it might be a bullet point that we can eliminate and use someplace else for something else. Okay. So with those bullet points, when I'm reviewing a resume, and I know my fellow coaches would agree with this, we are aiming to have about a third or so, third to a half of those bullet points be about the scope and responsibilities of your role. So kind of like when you were in that space as a financial analyst, what were the general areas that you were contributing in, kind of the tasks and things you were accountable for? That gives the reader a sense of, okay, kind of picturing. We're always trying to help the reader picture what you were doing. So it's like, okay, so analyzing, building financial statements and analyzing statements to identify trends and present to leadership. Like, okay, like that gives me a sense. I don't want all of the bullet points to be that though. I just want, a few, a third or a half, because what I'm really excited about, the fun stuff, is where we get to this 2/3 or half of the bullet points being around what you accomplished, that impact, how you achieved, how you initiated, what did you do, why did you do it, and what was the result or outcome. I'm very interested in those quantifiable results and impact. I'm interested in knowing that you were able to analyze financial statements and identify a discrepancy that saved the company $1 million. Something that's going to help me build a sense of what you are capable of doing if you come to work for my company. So this is where you need to have another set of eyes on that resume, because it's helpful to have somebody else read your bullet points and be able to say, okay, I'm getting a lot about what you've done, but not about what you really did that was well executed, or that was really notable, or that was quantifiable, that's going to help me understand more. So this is a point we're always trying to get you to, of having about a third being about the scope and 2/3 being about impact. So in building the bullet point, okay, again, what did you do? What was it for? And that result. You can see this formula working through. I was responsible for coming up with these promotional events. We needed to get new customers to buy our services. And then I did it. And so we got this 15% increase in our customer base. Like, awesome. You could be very simple and succinct and humble, like Minnesotans often are. And at the bottom, you would see like the before is coordinated promotional activities and events. Okay, that's very humble. However, if we remember, language is what is so important in our resume. So we want to make sure that you are giving the reader a full sense of what you are capable of. So then you see the actor developed and executed 9 sales promotions. That's a nice quantifiable number that increased the customer base by a percentage, another number, which helps the listener understand and picture what you did, and then gain $300,000 in sales. So as much as you can quantify and show that impact, we want you to do it. Try it out. If you're not certain if the numbers work, throw them in there. Let us help you think about it. I use the analogy a lot of if I say, oh, I baked cookies this past weekend. It's like, okay. But if I say I baked 220 cookies this past weekend, that's like, oh, that's a little more memorable. We remember numbers. So as you're building your bullet points, another best practice to be mindful of is to vary the format. And when you vary the format, that means we are going to start with like the skill. So I demonstrated this, planned an enterprise-wide project. So like that's the skill I did. We go back to those competencies we mentioned earlier. And then what did I do? I planned an enterprise project. Why? To close an old facility, and what happened? We were able to open this new facility in the headquarters state. Sounds good. But we also then, if we have all of our bullet points be that same kind of formula, like here's the skill I demonstrated and here was the result, our brain gets bored after a while reading the same kind of thing. So we need to mix it up and keep the reader on their toes. So then you see how we can flip things around and show that result or impact first, and then the skill. So that is a kind of next level, taking a resume from good to great, of being able to kind of flip that. So I say just start building your bullet points, and then you go back through and kind of edit and shift them around to vary it. Also, I mentioned earlier about impact, really helping the reader be able to get a sense and picture in their minds what you did. So as you can see, mention quantifying results with numbers as much as possible. One of the things I hear the most is like, Bridget, this work I did was 7 years ago. I don't remember it. Like, how could I possibly know? That's fair. That's super fair. I get that. We don't want you to make up anything, but we want you to do your best. So you can, thinking as much as you can about like the number of things, and it was anticipated results or estimated results, that might work as well to help you still give a little bit of a demonstration of those of like the quantifiable aspects of that bullet point. Another thing that can be challenging is like qualitative results, right? So I've had candidates that'll say the role that I'm in, I'm not delivering something that's specifically numbers, but instead it's something more relational or something that is more research-based, et cetera. So this is where we want a blend of qualitative and quantitative results. Absolutely. Show all the different dimensions of the work that you're able to do. So you'll see some examples like delivered recommendations, received or earned positive feedback, or earned recognition from leadership, met or exceeded goals and objectives, came in under time frame. It works. So aiming to do whatever you can to quantify and qualify your results will help make more impact on that resume. Final couple questions. How to write out numbers. Again, we're writing in that Twitter speak, so we want to keep things as succinct as possible. So here's some examples about how to keep those numbers a little more succinct if you're using like about or over. Acronyms, if it's a commonly used acronym, go ahead and put it in there. If it is something that is more unique to your industry, your field, or your company, spell it out the first time, then put the acronym in parentheses afterwards, and then you can use the acronym later on throughout your bullet points. And I find another just reminder on those company names, you can put in that little descriptor afterwards. Sometimes folks will also need to put a descriptor in about maybe like the type of product that they're working on, or an element of the bullet point needs a little more expanding. It's okay to pop something in parentheses if you need to. Another way to organize your content, if you are somebody who has been in an organization for many years, maybe it's not a hierarchical organization that has a really flat structure. And so instead of your role necessarily moving up title-wise, it's just more expanded. A variation that you can connect with your coach on to see if it works for you is to put in subheaders. This can be nice for a candidate like this candidate's was with this company for almost 10 years. And had done a ton of things in the organization. But initially when they came to us with their resume, it was just like 15 bullet points, which no brain wants to have to endure that. So what we can do instead is identify what are the core buckets of work that you did. So if this person was doing research, portfolio management, marketing. You could also have like notable achievements, fiscal management. Typically, the elements of the role that you're also probably going to be applying to, like what are those big buckets of work? For me, coaching, programming, leadership, and bringing cookies to work. Anyways, putting those subheaders in can help break up that content. If you're not certain if this is something for you, talk to your coach. I really would only advise it to folks who've been in a role for maybe more than 4 years or so. If that list of bullets is getting kind of long, it's nice to break it up with subheaders. So best practices, 1 to 2 pages, 1 page if you're 8 to 10 years or less. Make sure you've got those keywords. Each phrase needs to start with a strong action verb, and we want it to demonstrate a skill or knowledge base. A verb such as responsible for isn't a strong verb. Start with, if it's responsible for building XYZ, start with the word built or building. More recent roles, more bullet points. 2/3 of the bullet points, we want to have metrics or results. Vary that format, starting with the result or starting with the skill to keep the reader on their toes. Again, any questions you have related to resumes, you're always going to have a chance to connect with a coach on it. So thanks for sitting in for this video. We'll see you in the next one.